I don't think they care if NATO breaks up. I think for many in the Trump administration, taking Greenland and breaking up NATO would be what we call a twofer, two for the price of one.
The UK and France have signed a declaration of intent to deploy forces to Ukraine, boots on the ground, in other words, in event of a peace deal. Number 10 releasing that statement this evening, and it was repeated too by Keir Starmer. The US has said they are ready to do anything necessary to achieve peace, and that UK-France joint declaration on boots on the ground in the event of a peace deal is reliant on the US giving their backing, some sort of security guarantee as well. So that is the big line from the news conference after that Coalition of the Willing meeting in Paris this evening. Anything more on that and we will come back to it. Let's get some flash reaction though from Ambassador John Bolton. He's former National Security Advisor to Donald Trump. Ambassador Bolton, thanks for being with us.
Glad to be with you.
Give me your reaction to the UK and France pledging to put boots on the ground if a peace deal is signed between Ukraine and Russia.
Well, I guess there are 2 points I'd make just hearing it now for the first time. The first is that Vladimir Putin has said many times that he will not accept NATO troops in Ukraine as part of a peace deal, that in fact, part of his objective here is not just taking control of all of Ukraine. He wants to structure force alignments in Europe to significantly reduce NATO's presence. So saying that France and Britain are willing to commit troops doesn't address the question what Putin is going to have to say about it, number one. Number two, it doesn't appear from what they said that we know exactly what the rules of engagement of this peacekeeping force are going to be. There are basically two models. One is the UN model, which is that the peacekeepers don't use military force except to protect themselves, that they're observers reporting violations of ceasefire by one or the other or both parties, but not actually taking any steps to do anything about it. That's the typical UN model. The other is called peace enforcement, where the peace force takes military action against violators of the ceasefire. So hypothetically, that kind of force, if it saw a Russian violation against Ukraine, would engage in military hostilities against Russia. I don't know that this has been thought out by leaders in London and Paris. Perhaps it has, and we just haven't heard about it yet. But I think publics in both countries would want to know, are their soldiers being deployed to be observers, basically? Or are they being observed to fight if need be?
Is it correct that the US is not going to get involved with this? Certainly from Keir Starmer's point of view, the statement from number 10, this is reliant on the US being able to offer security guarantees, not to be on the ground, but to offer their protection and assurance effectively. Again, the details of this really need to be thrashed out a little bit. But is it right that the US leaves, at the moment, France and the UK to take this responsibility?
Well, we don't know what the U.S. delegation to this meeting, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, we don't know what they've said, but Trump's position in the past, which, is it's worth what you pay for it, but in the past was there would be no U.S. boots on the ground, although he would consider flying air cover, and he would consider continuing to supply U.S. intelligence, presumably about Russian military activities and potential ceasefire violations. The continuing provision of intelligence to Ukraine in the event of a ceasefire is very important because only we have the capability to provide what the Ukrainians need, as we saw in 2025 when it was temporarily cut off and was gravely damaging to Ukraine. Whether U.S. is going to provide air cover or not is to me, a very important and open question, because if British and French troops are fighting Russian troops on the ground, you can bet Russian air power will be used in defense of their forces. Will Britain and France have the wherewithal to defend theirs? Are they really expecting Donald Trump to provide them with air cover? So I can only raise those questions. We don't know the answers at this point.
OK, so a joint declaration between the UK and France with the intent to deploy forces to Ukraine in the event of a peace deal. We know that the UK and France will establish military hubs in Ukraine. That was part of the statement to go hand in hand with that. What does it mean just from our standing in this, from the UK standing in this, Ambassador Bolton, about the fact that Keir Starmer the British Prime Minister, is putting Britain front and centre in maintaining the peace, in being a deterrent to Vladimir Putin?
Well, I think the basic question, if Great Britain is willing to fight and suffer casualties in order to deter Russian violations of the ceasefire, that's a very significant step forward, and something that's to be commended. Although it also recognizes we will have entered into a ceasefire that leaves Russia in control of 20% of Ukraine's territory, maybe becoming a permanent border as peace negotiations drag out. The real issue, though, if I may say so again, is whether Russia accepts this or not. They've said in the past that reducing NATO's influence in Europe is what they think this war is all about, and to accept significant deployments of forces from two of NATO's largest members, France and Britain, is something that one would think Putin would object to. So it could be a poison pill for the entire ceasefire agreement, unfortunately.
OK, all right. Well, look, more reaction from the news conference from the words of Keir Starmer, Emmanuel Macron, Friedrich Merz of Germany, Steve Witkoff of the United States, all at that news conference at the moment. I can see Volodymyr Zelensky standing there on the podiums too. So we'll reflect on that in about 5-7 minutes' time with Nina Dos Santos, former Europe editor of CNN. So more to come on that. John Bolton, whilst I've got you, let me play you the comments of the US Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller last night, who was speaking to CNN. Said no one would stand in the way if America took control of Greenland.
The real question is, by what right does Denmark assert control over Greenland? What is the basis of their territorial claim? What is their basis of having Greenland as a colony of Denmark? The United States is the power of NATO. For the United States to secure the Arctic region, to protect and defend NATO and NATO interests, obviously Greenland should be part of the United States. And so that's a conversation that we're going to have. There's no need to even think or talk about this in the context that you're asking of a military operation. Nobody's going to fight the United States militarily over the future of Greenland.
Stephen Miller saying there that the US has the right to take Greenland. Will Donald Trump seize Greenland, John?
Well, I don't think so. But I think it's important for your listeners to understand that Stephen Miller is somebody who talks to Donald Trump every day. I know him very well from the first term. And what he said on that interview is what he's telling Trump every day. This is a key advisor in Donald Trump's ear. Now, I think that the odds of the use of military force against Denmark are very small, but I think this conversation that Trump has provoked and the kinds of comments Miller is making are extraordinarily detrimental to NATO.
Well,
and
also, Ambassador Bolton, sorry to interrupt you, but he's not even suggesting that there needs to be any combat, any military intervention at all from the US. He's suggesting, really, that the US can come in and pluck possession of Greenland into its hands. He's not even talking about a face-off with Denmark, because he's saying, who on earth would want to fight the US anyway? Who on earth is going to come and have a go? So he's just simply suggesting that the US can seize Greenland.
That's right. That is what Donald Trump is listening to. Now, I may say that played no part in the 2024 election. I don't think anybody in the United States thought we'd be attacking Denmark, which is the country, the kingdom that controls Greenland. But for those who wonder why Trump is an aberrational president, you're listening to it right there. And so the question is for Denmark, for other NATO countries, is how to get this issue out of the headlines so that we can work on the question of the security of Greenland without having Stephen Miller explaining to Trump that he can put a brigade of the American army to land at the capital of Nuuk, the capital city of Greenland, and they'll meet no resistance and will just take it over. As long as Trump believes that, and as long as he thinks he can get away with it, the risk is there. I don't think they care if NATO breaks up. I think for many in the Trump administration, taking Greenland and breaking up NATO would be what we call a twofer, two for the price of one.
So they would celebrate the breaking up of NATO if those NATO nations felt they had no other choice but to do that. Donald Trump has reiterated in the last day or so that the United States needs to take over Greenland. This is not a Stephen Miller thing. It is very much a Donald Trump thing, front and centre. And of course, NATO nations could well just stand by and have to let it happen, couldn't they? They can either fight back, they can dissolve NATO, then that makes NATO nations vulnerable to other dictators like Vladimir Putin, or they can stand by and let it happen because they've got no choice.
Well, I think there would be a volcanic reaction in the United States if Trump used military force against Greenland. It's so outrageous, so hard to contemplate. I think it would produce a crisis in the military, really a governmental crisis in the United States. But this is a demonstration, really, as I said, of how aberrational Trump is and why we need to work to mitigate the damage he's doing and will do for the next 3 years, hopefully correct it after it's happened.
But ultimately, in a word, you don't think Donald Trump will seize Greenland?
No, I think he believes in the true sense of the art of the deal, that if he says something so outrageous that people can't conceive of it, they'll get so concerned that they'll give him 20% of what he wants, which he never expected to get in the first place. Just grit your teeth, ignore the noise, try and take this issue away from the spotlight, and hope Donald Trump's short attention span moves him on to something else.
Look, really appreciate speaking to you. Thank you very much. That is Ambassador John Bolton, former National Security Advisor to Donald Trump there, giving you his perspective on the comments of Trump, but also on the prospect of boots on the ground.